Have you been wanting to buy a nice copy of the Carl Zeiss Jena Bauer 75mm f1.5, but the price is just too expensive? Or do you like crazy swirly bokeh? If you say yes to any of these questions, then this TT Artisan lens could be the perfect lens for you. Kia ora, good morning everyone, Muchivon here, welcome back to the channel. So on this channel, we have just recently looked at the TT Artisan 75mm f2 lens. And today, we are looking at another 75mm lens from TT Artisan. This is the TT Artisan 75mm f1.5. But before we continue, I just want to let you guys know the lens sample I used for this review was sent to me by TT Artisan. I do not have to return the sample after this review, but I also did not receive any money for this review. I just want to make sure everything is clear before we start. So, this TT Artisan 75mm f1.5 is a manual focus lens that is completely mechanical. It is for full frame camera, available in M42 mount only. For those of you who are not too familiar with the M42 mount, basically it is a very old screw mount that you can now easily adapt to any mirrorless cameras in the market using a cheap dumb adapter. The body design of this lens looks very similar to the Carl Zeiss Jena Bauer 75mm f1.5 version 3. If you like the beautiful old lens design, then you will love the look of this lens. Actually, it's not just the body design. The optics design of this TT Artisan lens also seems to be very similar to the Bauer 75mm as well. It has 6 elements in 4 groups. For those of you who are familiar with the Bauer 75mm f1.5, you will know it is a lens that is famous for its swirly bokeh and also the overall rendering. It is a very sought after lens. If you go to eBay, you will see the price of a good clean second-hand copy of the Bauer can be easily $2,000 to $3,000. And we are talking about a lens that is more than 60 years old. And for this TT Artisan lens, which is obviously a clone of the Carl Zeiss Jena lens, the price is only $269. So it's like 1/10 the price of a nice second-hand copy of the Carl Zeiss Jena lens these days. The lens feels very solid. The weight of this lens is around 560 grams. It feels like TT Artisan just used a large chunk of solid metal to build this lens. I never have a chance to try the original Carl Zeiss version, but I really don't think the original version can be more solid than this lens. There is a large focus ring on the lens. Focus flow is over 180 degrees. The focus ring feels very smooth. It feels really nice when I turn the focus ring. The mechanical aperture ring is at the front and it is 2 clicks per stop from f1.5 to f5.6 and then it is 1 click per stop. So this is just like the original Carl Zeiss version. However, the direction of the TT Artisan's aperture ring is opposite to the original version for some reason. The clicks on the aperture ring feels very nice as well. The front filter thread is 58mm. The lens doesn't come with any lens hood, but it does come with a metal front lens cap and also a metal rear lens cap. Talk about metal build quality, you just can't be more solid than this lens. Now, because of the size and the weight of the lens, and the fact that you do need to use an adapter when you use this lens on a mirrorless camera, so once you mount this lens on a mirrorless camera, it may feel a bit front heavy. It is definitely the case when I tried it on my Lumix S9 and the Sony a7CR. It feels a bit better when I mount it on my Lumix S5 too, but still, I would hold the lens with my left hand when I'm shooting with this lens. Okay, now let's have a look at the image quality. Instead of starting with image sharpness like I usually would do, this time we'll start with bokeh first. Because the reason why people want to buy this lens is not about the image sharpness. This lens is really about the rendering, especially the bokeh, the swirly bokeh. When you turn the focus ring of this TT Artisan lens from infinity to close distance, you will start see the background turn into bokeh balls. Near the corner of the frame, the bokeh will look really swirly. For some people, this may look a bit distracting, but a lot of people really love this for artistic reasons. The swirly bokeh is really swirly at f1.5, but even when you stop down a bit to f2, you can still see the swirly bokeh effect, just not quite as intense as wide open. Once you stop down to f2.8, then the swirly bokeh effect would almost disappear. So if you find the swirly bokeh effect a little bit too strong at f1.5, then you can change the aperture value to control the amount of swirly bokeh. And not only the bokeh is swirly, there is also a bit of halo ring at the outside of the bokeh. Once again, some people would hate it, and some people would think it adds a lot of character to the photo. I myself really love this kind of bokeh effect. This allows me to create portrait photo that looks different, especially when you have some trees or maybe some lights in the background. Okay, now we'll look at the image sharpness. Let's zoom in the center first. The center is slightly soft at f1.5. There is a bit of glow, but I can still read the small numbers on the test chart. If you use it for portrait, that little bit of glow and softness may actually be a good thing. Stopping down the lens will gradually improve the center sharpness. At f2.8, the center is already pretty sharp. We reach the maximum sharpness at around f5.6. The center would then become softer when we approach minimum aperture due to diffraction. If you look at the corner, at f1.5, the corner is really soft, very soft. We need to stop down the lens to around f5.6, then the corner becomes sharp. Focus at the center or the corner of the photo doesn't make any difference to the corner sharpness. That means the soft corner is not caused by field curvature. Usually, I would say having such soft corner would be a major weakness, but I believe most people buying this lens will be for portrait. The corner would usually turn into swirly bokeh anyway, so in practice, the soft corner probably doesn't really matter at all. This TT Artisan lens minimum focus distance is approximately 0.75 meter. And from my calculation, the maximum magnification ratio is just over 0.13 times, which is really not bad. I have even used this lens to do a bit of toy photography, and that works quite well. When taking photos at close-up distance, there is a bit of glow effect at f1.5, but you only need to stop down to f2 if you want to get rid of most of the glow effect, and the photo will look much sharper. When shooting at the maximum aperture f1.5, I can see some noticeable vignetting. Stop down to f2, vignetting would improve a lot. Once I stop down to f2.8, then vignetting becomes almost not noticeable. Chromatic aberration is not the strength of this lens. I see color fringing in a lot of my photos. Sometimes even the photo that doesn't have very high contrast, I still can see a bit of color fringing. My local test photo also shows a bit of chromatic aberration as well, so be prepared, you may need to do a bit of post-processing if you don't want to have too much color fringing in your photos. This lens has very minimal amount of distortion. Look at this brick wall test photo. We pretty much can't see any distortion. So there shouldn't be any distortion issue when you are shooting real-world photos. Lens flare control is acceptable with this TT Artisan lens. While I can see a bit of lens flare and drop in contrast when shooting into a light source, the amount of lens flare is usually not too crazy, and to be honest, a bit better than my expectation. While usually I would prefer lenses with minimal amount of lens flare, but for this type of lenses, the lens flare and the lower contrast adds a bit of character to the photo. It helps create a bit of vintage look that I myself really don't mind at all. If you want to have sunstars, you would need to stop down this lens quite a bit. From around f8, sunstars becomes sharper. At the minimum aperture f16, the tails of the 26 pounds sunstars becomes pretty sharp. Focus briefing is quite noticeable when I did my usual 1 meter to 20 meter focus briefing test. If you look at the vertical lines near the edge, you can see them move quite a bit as I change the focus distance. I remember when I visited TT Artisan's headquarters last year and met with their founder Mr. Lee. It was very clear to me that Mr. Lee is a big camera geek just like a lot of us. Actually, when I was looking at his camera collection in the office, I think he's even a bigger geek than me. So it's not really surprising that TT Artisan is trying to replicate some of the really popular vintage lenses from long time ago. Some of these legendary lenses that is loved by a lot of people, but not really accessible because of the extremely high price of a good second-hand copy. These old lenses are usually not quite as technically perfect as the newer lenses, but the imperfection is actually the reason why we love these lenses. And this TT Artisan 75mm f1.5 is a good example. Center sharpness is only okay using today's standard. Corner sharpness would be terrible. There is also quite a bit of chromatic aberration as well. But the slightly soft center with the swirly bokeh together really helps create a special look that most other modern lenses can't offer. The buttery smooth focus ring and the satisfying clicks from the aperture ring together give us a very nice shooting experience. Yes, the lens is quite heavy. I wish it's a little bit lighter, but holding this really solid lens with full metal construction also feels great. With the very shallow depth of field and some of the flaws in the image quality, it is not exactly easy to master this lens. But if you manage to do that, it will reward you with some really beautiful photos with a lot of character.